Okay, so let's start learning about laying out your web page as we're actually doing the second part of the Module 2 assignment. Module 3, sorry. The first Module 3 assignment. So in this particular assignment, first you're doing the box model, which I've already done a video on, and you can use that to make your own box model page. And then we're going to actually do a basic layout page, and we're going to use the box model, some lorem ipsum, and some structure. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my basic structure template that I've created for myself and resave that. So I'll go ahead and do File, Save As. And it says I should be saving it as layout-practice.html. So I'm going to save this to a new folder on my desktop called Module 3 Assignment 1, and then click Create. And again, I'm going to call this layout-practice.html. Okay, so it already has that. It's in the folder. We're going to hit save. And we're going to start going through this. So we're going to do layout practice. And we need a CSS. So we'll go to File, New. And it says we should create a CSS called layout-practice.css. So I'm going to change this to CSS and save it in the same folder. So we're going to do save layout-practice.css. Notice it's in a weird folder, so I need to make sure I find that Module 3 Assignment 1 folder and save it in the same folder. So going back to my HTML, I need to replace this file name with layout-practice.css, and there we go. So it's going to talk about throughout the entire module, you've been reading through the MDN website, Shayhow, etc., and it starts to introduce you to some structure tags, which means structure means like the boxes that we're going to lay out to sit on the left, the right, the top, the bottom, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and let's ignore the heading 1 in the paragraph real quick, and let's take a look at this actual example and how we would lay that out. Well, we know if it's going to be seen by people, it needs to all be in the body tag. And most websites are going to have a header with the logo. And so there's an actual tag for that called header. So I'm going to put that there. And this is where we can type in, this is the header, or I can put add the logo here in the header. Okay, so that's just a note for me and for you. So later on we build our websites, we know what needs to go in here. And then we have a tag also for navigation. So the menu bar, the navigation bar, whatever you want to call it, we have a tag for that. So we're going to type nav and then put add navigation bar here. So we're just building from the top down and from left to right. Okay. So now we have these things called section tags, and this could be a whole section, or even the sidebar and this can be all considered one section together. If this was a blog and we had an article and an article and an article, we have an article tag. And then anytime you have a sidebar, we can actually call that the aside tag. Okay. So now for this one, we're just going to keep it really simple. So I'm going to put aside for my sidebar and say this is the blue area in the example. Add some fake text here. Now fake text is considered something that we use in web design just to fill some content so we can see what it looks like. And it is known as lorem ipsum, LOREM space IPSUM. So if I come over here, you can search for lorem ipsum, and there's some just plain lorem ipsum. I love Neil deGrasse Tyson, so I always go to him for lorem ipsum. And I want I just want one paragraph for right now for my aside. So we'll go ahead and copy that. So again, it's just fake text to make it seem a little bit more robust. And then for my article or section area, I want to actually have way more content. So I'm going to copy that. Okay. So back over here, we're still looking at this. We're going to have our section area. So the next thing I'm going to build is this area right here. So I'm going to call this section. And I'm going to paste that content. And we're just keeping it simple. There's like debate about section versus article, etc. And we're not going to get into that right now. I just want you to see this basic layout. And the last thing we have is the footer. So that's where we might put the copyright and maybe our social media icons. So I'm just going to put copyright for right now, just to make it simple. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kind of structure tags that help lay out our website. So now what we need to do is we need to start adding some CSS to them. So as you can see, these ones have garish colors. They're probably not going to stay on there for the website, but that helps you see what's going on. So let's go ahead and do File, Save, and then File Live Preview. And this is going to show us what's happening so far. So, ooh, and I forgot, we got some heading things down here that we need to get rid of. All right. So when you see this, let's save it and then come over here, refresh it. There you go. You don't see any color, nothing sitting to the left and the right. There's no spacing to really make it easier to read. And so that's where the CSS is going to come in. So just like other CSS, we can start targeting certain things and telling it what it should look like. So let's go into our CSS and say, okay, we want to say the header tag should be background color. And we're going to just keep going with this example so we can see what's happening. So there's background color of orange. And then we want to target the nav and background color. It's kind of like a orange yellow. So for me, I'm just going to do pink right now. Let's pick a little bit different pink. Okay. And let's see. Then we've got our aside. And we are going to say background color of blue. Sky blue. And then we have the section. And that one is white in ours, but I'm just going to do a light gray so we can see it. So background color of, let's just do like, what's a gray? Gainsborough. That's a fancy name. Okay. And then last but not least, we're going to do footer. Same thing. So I just go through and just start adding all the colors first. So let's do green, yellow. Okay. So there we're looking pretty similar to this. And now we need to start telling things how to sit. So as I'm looking at the header, it looks like it definitely has some padding. So padding of, let's do 10 pixels. That gives it some space. And it looks like it does have a margin because it has this gap between. So we're going to go ahead and put margin 10 pixels as well. So I actually do want to keep that the same for the nav and the aside. There we go. Wonder why it's not. Okay. So there we go. Now it's looking a little bit better. Let's say I do want to do that with the section area and the footer area. So I'm just copying and pasting. So everything looks pretty even. Okay. So if you can see a little bit more of this, if it would just get out of there. Okay. Now, this one, we're having an issue with padding. Why is it having an issue? Oh, because I didn't put a semicolon right there. Okay. So anytime you see weird things happening, you look over your code above and below it and see if that's what's happening. So now if I'm off of that particular rule, you can see we've got a lot of spacing. So now in the tutorial or in the content, we were talking about something called a float. And a float lets us move things to the left and move things to the right. So right now we want the aside to float to the left. So we're going to do float left. And then all of a sudden you're like, cool. Well, that didn't float left. Well, the reason why is because in order for it to work, it needs to have the float property, plus it needs to have a width. Now we could do something specific like width of 500 pixels if we want to. However, and now you can see it floats, and it also kind of has the other text wrap around it, which I'll talk about in a second. But that 500 pixels means it's 500 no matter how big or small my browser is. So for mobile phones, it might be too big. So instead, what we like to do is do like 25%. So, well, actually 33%, so that it's an even 66 or 68 or 67% for the section. So I'm going to go ahead and do, where's the percent? Okay. So now that's 33%. Now watch when I resize it. See how it also stays 33% of the width of the browser. So that's going to be great for mobile devices. Okay. Now the other thing you need to be aware of when building a website is that once something's floated, it's kind of hovering above the content. And so this gray box went underneath that blue floated aside, but over here, the inline text still sees the float, so that's why it's kind of still sitting to the right of the floated box. So if I truly want this gray box to be over here, then I need to float that to the right. So let's go to this section, and we're going to change that to float right. And we also need a width for it to work, and I'm going to say it should be 60, well, let's just do 65%. Leave a little bit of empty space in there. Okay. So all of a sudden things got weird, right? This is sitting underneath, and this is still like sitting to the, so it's to the left, this one's to the right, but they're not sitting next to each other. And then copyright has moved all the way up. So one of the things is this is probably too big. So if I do 25%, see how all of a sudden they are sitting next to each other? And if I resize, it is moving with it, okay? But all of a sudden, see how they like eventually will collapse or be on top of each other, which is sometimes really good because you want it to lay out differently when it's on a mobile site. But for right now, we'll just leave them at 25% and we'll deal with that issue later. The other thing is, remember that when things float, the other things underneath it won't see it. It'll slide under, but the words see it. So that's why it's still down here, but you can still see that green back here. So in order to fix the footer, what we need to do is, shoot, I just forgot the clear. It's the clear fix. Clear both, because we have something floating on the left and the right. So this is going to clear on both the left and right. If I just said left, then it would only clear the left. See how it's going a little bit under the right? And if I just said clear right, then it would clear just the right one. So if this was longer, you'd see issues. So I just clear both. I've never really cleared one side or the other, just in like rare circumstances. So now when I click here, all of a sudden you can see that all of these things are starting to sit quite right. So I can go ahead and delete things like this section. I don't actually want it to be a background color. I can add some borders and all that good stuff. I can add some rounded corners. You can see they have rounded corners here. You don't have to do that, but it's just something to think about. And then you can go in here and change these garish colors to look somewhat nicer. It's up to you. But now as you add more content in here, let's add a few more paragraphs. I can add a couple of these. You'll see it's a little bit more dramatic here. And part of this is all of these should have P tags inside of that section. So like each one of these should be in a P tag. I just am too lazy to actually do that. Or let's see, cut it, paste it, paste it, paste it, paste it, and then copy this. All right, paste, 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 file save. Now you can see when it's a little bit longer, if I move this up, now you can see that it's pushing it down and this really looks like a sidebar. So if we're looking over here, you would need to also make sure you added H1s, H2s, make sure you have paragraphs, and unordered list, a list item. I didn't have time to do that here. You should have the nav, the header, check, we got that. You can use filler text, which we did. And you want to test this out in 2 browsers. So open it up in Chrome, Safari, what is it? Oh, Adobe, or no, not Adobe, Edge. Yeah, Explorer? I don't know, Edge. You can test them out in any of those to make sure that they are functioning. So we still need to look at what happens here when it collapses. But for right now, that's giving us a nice, flexible, fluid layout that we need to tweak a little bit more.